housekeeping out of the way, Jody is going to go ahead and start recording for us. All right, so let's meet our CTPD consultants from the state support teams that will be helping facilitate today's meeting. Lisa, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, good morning. Lisa Height from State Support Team Region 1 up in the Toledo area, so extreme Northwest Ohio. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. This is Kenny Seawright, Region 2 CTPD consultant, Erie, Huron, and Lorain counties.
Good morning, group. This is Chris Kalina from the State Support Team Region 3, serving all of Cuyahoga County.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Janice Abram. I am both the post-secondary and the CTPD consultant for Region 4, which is Lake and Geauga counties.
Good morning, Jody Glazer from State Support Team 5, which is Ashtabula, Trumbull, Mahoney, and Columbiana counties. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ray Blevins. I'm the CTPD consultant for Region 6, located out of Wapakoneta, Ohio.
I think Julie was having some problems.
I'll take it away. I'm Stacia Kaschak. I am from Region 8, which is serving Medina, Portage, and Summit counties. Welcome.
And I'm back. The power came back on in our office. I'm Julie Frankel from SSD 7. Happy Wednesday.
Not sure if Krista's with us, but Krista Allison is in Region 9. Region 10, we have open.
Good morning. I'm Erin Curtis with State Support Team Region 11 in Central Ohio, CTPD consultant and post-secondary consultant.
Good morning. I am Radisha Young Willingham. I am also here with Erin. So we serve Franklin County and the surrounding counties, which are Delaware, Fairfield, Licking, Madison, and Union. I hope I got them all. Good morning.
And I'm Lydia Brodegard. I am from Region 12 in Southeast Ohio, and we serve 13 counties, and I'm the CTPD consultant and a regional data lead.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Salazzo from State Support Team 13 in Cincinnati. Glad to have you here.
Good morning. Mike McCoy from CTPD consultant for SST 14 and 15 along the river in Southern Ohio. Offices located in Piketon and in Hillsborough.
And good morning. I'm Melinda Johnston. I'm the Career Tech and Transition Consultant in Region 16, which is the very far southeast corner. So welcome, guys. Good to see you.
We also have some members from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves now as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Szymanski, and I am the Secondary Transition and Workforce Development Consultant with the Office for Exceptional Children. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning. I'm Emily Menker with the Office of Career Technical Education at the Department of Education and Workforce. I am the consultant for career-based intervention and job training coordination. Happy you're here.
Good morning. My name is Leah Amstutz, and I lead the Office of Career Technical Education at the Department of Education and Workforce.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Our topics for today, we've been through our welcome, and then we will have some brief updates from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. We will then watch a video about the Career Pathways Support Networks. We will then discuss Transition to Work Endorsement Panel, the integrated multi-tiered system of supports, which includes PBIS and EWIMS. And then to finish out this session, we'll do regional breakout sessions.
All right, we're going to kick it over to Amy.
All right, so we don't have a lot of updates. In fact, I have one, and it's really important, though. I want to welcome Chelsea Canterbury to the Office for Exceptional Children. I'm sure many of you know Chelsea from her previous role in the Office of Career Technical Education, but we stole her and now she is working with us. So, Chelsea, I don't know if you just want to say hello to everyone.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Excited you're here, and I am super excited to be back supporting secondary transition work. So let's do it.
All right, I'm going to kick it over then to Emily for any other updates.
Thanks, Amy. I also only have one update, and this is just a reminder for the 2026 Octa Spring Conference. If you haven't already, make sure you register and put that on your calendar, Wednesday, March 11th through Friday, March 13th. So we hope to see everyone there.
Thank you, Amy and Emily. Next up, we have our career pathway support networks, and we have a video to share with you all to give you a better idea about this CPSN.
Right. Hello, and thank you for joining us to this introduction to Career Path Support Networks. I'm Emily Menker, an Education Program Specialist with the Office of Career Technical Education. I'm joined by my colleague, Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Samansky, and I am the Secondary Transition and Workforce Development Consultant with the Office for Exceptional Children.
We are also joined by Dr. Brian Bontempo, Executive Director of Ohio's Career Pathway Support Networks, or CPSNs. Brian, thank you for joining us and providing us the opportunity to learn more about you and this exciting initiative. So just
thank you, Amy. Yeah, and Emily. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, we're excited. So Brian, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I've been in the education business for a few years, but as I reflect on my professional experience, I really think of myself as a coach and a teacher at the core, which I believe most of us in this field recognize. I've spent a lot of time in both middle schools and high schools and educational service center and at career centers. And early in my career, I was a teacher in a middle school in Independence local at the middle school and at the high school. I taught business and computers. And then from there, I went to Mayfield City Schools and did the same. I was the director of technology and taught in both the middle school and the high school. And then from there, I went into school administration. I went to Twinsburg City as a middle school assistant principal, and then went to Willoughby South High School as a high school assistant principal, and then later became the principal at Willoughby South High School. And so from there, I went to the Educational Service Center, Lake County, which is now the Western Reserve Educational Service Center. And I had really, in all of those experiences, there was always challenges and opportunities. And I really just felt like, some of the advice that my father gave me. He was an elementary principal. So I grew up in that environment, and he always told me that you need to prepare yourself for the next opportunity, and how can you have the greatest impact. And so I think that was just really good advice in the education space, because we're always learning, always looking for opportunities to do something better for that student right in front of you, or for a school building, or for a school district. And so when I had the opportunity to be at the Educational Service Center, it was the ability to be really creative. And we started programs. I did HR. We did preschool, alternative schools, special ed. I was there when we had the CERC. I don't know if folks remember those days, but and then that transition to the state support team. I was actually on the committee that wrote that for Region 4. And then and later became the superintendent of the and so my education is, as I went through for my years at Ashland college, was now Ashland University, and then earned master's degrees at John Carroll on 2 occasions, and then later in my doctorate. All of that business background and education really gave me the opportunity to think creatively and be innovative, and but really stay rooted in what's important about how do we help that student that's right in front of us, or the teacher that we support. And so the opportunity came for me to be the superintendent of the Auburn Career Center, which serves Lake and Geauga counties. And it was in a time where we were really expanding, and the opportunity to do interesting things like renovate facilities and expand programs, enrollment, rebranded. And so that was a really exciting time in career and technical education, a really exciting time right now. But we're also seeing where it's connecting to everything we do in the K-12 space. And so when this opportunity presented itself, to me, it felt like the great fit. It fitted my own personal mission of having an impact. And so just rolled up the sleeves and got started right away.
Wow, thanks, Brian. That is a wealth of experience. And what I love hearing is all of those connections that you do have to middle school and high school both, because as you said, we constantly want to be focusing on expanding career tech opportunities, and that's definitely our future forward mission. So you bring a wealth of knowledge.
Well, I really I appreciate the comments, and it's those opportunities that we all have. It really is about how do we leverage that to improve the opportunities. And so and I really think that this is which really makes this a special time for all of us, is that we're really working across lines that we haven't done before. And so that it's a challenge, but it's also the exciting time as professionals for us to be able to reach across into an area that we may not know as much as we'd like to, and have partners help us figure that out together. That's really what this conversation, as I was thinking about, that's what this is really about. How does the career tech community and the special ed community and all those that are connected to that, how do we help one another, elevate opportunities for students?
I agree wholeheartedly, and it just makes my heart very happy that we were able to have this conversation. Could you tell us a little bit about the Career Pathway Support Network and what are the goals for the network?
Sure, happy to. So the Career Pathway Support Network is, there are 7 regions in Ohio, and those regions align directly with the Jobs Ohio regions. So if you think from a structure perspective, we have workforce and regional efforts going on across the state of Ohio. It makes total sense for us to layer over the training side, and that's what we do, right? So, from the get-go, it's really well aligned. So the CPSN network there's 7 of them established directly in line with Jobs Ohio. So in those 7 regions, there is a fiscal agent, as we have in many other areas. The fiscal agent in each of those 7 regions has goals and obligations that they need to fulfill. And one of them is the establishment of a steering committee. And so these steering committees are representative of leaders in the region. It's Career Tech Planning District leaders, it's K-12 leaders, it's workforce leaders, it's higher ed, and any of those support organizations within the regions that help in that workforce arena. They are challenged with, as a steering committee, the local fiscal agent. We call the folks that are leading those groups the leads. They're challenged with making sure that those steering committees are well represented of their region. And so it's a fluid effort, and it can change, but the idea was, let's start with the 15 to 20 leaders, and let's roll our sleeves up and take a look at our local challenges or regional challenges. And so those steering committees, as we were setting them up, I would say to them, it's about an 80-20 job assignment. 80% of this job is to bring your expertise into the room and share everything you know about the lane that you're in. And so as we look at some of the challenges regionally, then how do we work across those lines to brainstorm and to solve, or maybe it's look at data in one way differently than we did previously, or facilities or training opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. Let's bring all of that knowledge into one room. And then 20% is the oversight side. You know, are we spending the money the right way? Do we have the right staff in place? Are we meeting the goals and obligations that we said we would when we responded to the RFA? But really, the really nuts and bolts of the effort is that steering committee solving those big challenges. So the steering committees have one of their obligations is to make sure that they have a regional plan in place by the end of 2026. So there's a lot of data gathering and work and conversations that have been started and will continue over the next several months. Probably one of the first goals and challenges is that each of the CPSN, well, each of the school districts actually have to ensure that 7th and 8th grade students have access to career and technical education. Districts used to be able to sign a waiver to be exempt from that obligation, but they can no longer do that. So the CPSNs are in place to help provide support to help school districts think through that process. Every school district has a career tech planning district that they're assigned to, and those career tech planning district leads are extremely knowledgeable about the workforce. So as they're thinking like, where do we get started here? We start with the CPSNs and the career tech planning districts. Those middle school programs they need to align to work that's happening at the career tech planning district, because that makes sense to start to have middle school students start to think about what they like, what they don't like, start to build some interest and head down that on their own personal journey. So that work is happening right now. There's also just the application process for doing career technical education. Now that's the kind of behind the scenes work that happens. That application process is fairly robust. It requires a lot of thought on the planning side. It requires a lot of interaction with the planning districts, with the local districts. And so they serve as a consulting arm of that effort to make sure that we meet all of our state obligations and our federal obligations when we're doing applications in career and technical education. There are weighted funds that are aligned to that, so we want to make sure we get that right. And so that's a big piece of the work that they will continue to do. Another part is just supporting teachers and administrators. We know that this is new to a lot of people, and educators, everybody has good intention, but it doesn't mean that they have all the knowledge and skills necessary to be able to deliver it in a high quality way. And so the CPSNs have folks that are identified to be point people in contact to be able to provide that support to help teachers and administrators be successful. And then the other where I think one of the really important areas, and then the rubber hits the road, if you will, is this idea of career connected learning, and then high quality career advising and mentoring. I mean, that is, if you think about it, it's where learning connects to the world and how we apply it, right? I mean, that's what we think about. When we learn something, how are we going to apply it? And so as we're having these conversations, whether it's what you're doing in a math class, or if you're taking a vocational middle school class, or where even your first career tech class, maybe it's at the Career Center or the Compact or at your own high school, you start to have those conversations about what do I like? What am I good at? How do I take that knowledge and skill as an adult that's working with that young person? You hear Director Dakin talk about it often. It's really important to have a caring adult working with a young person. Well, what are we doing in that dialogue? Are we having conversations about those interests and those aptitudes? In some cases, it's conversation. In some cases, it might be a tool that you use. But at the end of the day, it's the follow-up then. Now that you've been through an experience, and I'll give you an example. Maybe you have a guest speaker that comes to a middle school science class, and they're from the local hospital, and they talk about what they do every day. But before that, there's a conversation about, here's what we're doing in class, and here's how this connects. And then here's some things to think about when the guest speaker's there. Then afterward, we have a debrief and we talk about, gee, what did we learn? Do we know something different? Does that change our mind about things? Maybe we take a class next year that we hadn't thought about taking because now we have an interest. Or maybe we change that. Or maybe as you get older, you think about, is my summer job really aligned with something I like to do? And so it starts to become a thoughtful process. And sometimes it's with a parent, sometimes it's with a teacher. And so the more that all of us think about that dialogue that we have with young people, the more that's going to be impactful. So, but putting systems in place to ensure that that happens, that's back to the CPSN. So that's going to be that back and forth between local districts, the Career Tech Planning District, and the CPSNs to have that dialogue. One, to inform the local district to make sure that people that are having conversations with kids are familiar with, those programs and the workforce needs in their region, and so they become more aware about that. So the CPSN folks are going to be front and center in that effort to make sure that that happens. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to be able to connect high quality pathways to students' interests and aptitudes. And so we have to support the folks that are having those conversations with students. And so that's back to kind of, that whether it's a work-based learning experience or it's a different class, all of those are good opportunities. It's really just having that dialogue about what's the right fit for that student. So that's kind of the long version of what the CPSNs are all about.
Thanks, Brian. Definitely a lot of work for them to do. They're going to be busy. I love hearing about, so there's sort of the overarching goals, statewide that we want, but I really love hearing about the steering committees and that it's very much a regional focus. They're going to be looking at their regional data and doing regional planning. So I love hearing about that. It sounds like a lot of great resources, support, tools, help for our partnering schools and districts.
Yeah, so in this group is really, it's just in its infant stages too. I mean, it's been just over 3 months. And so there's been a lot of data that's been created and a lot to continue to look at. So it's only going to get better too.
Yeah, we're excited to see where everything goes. Now, earlier you talked so much about the collaboration and partnerships across multiple arenas, and this meeting that we're having today is for those kinds of partnerships. How can career technical education and special education partner together to ensure we're providing equitable services to students with disabilities, but also providing them the most fulfilling opportunities for them. So how can CPSNs help to increase access and support for students with disabilities?
Well, so first of all, I think it's important to make sure that local districts have that communication connection with their CPSN and vice versa. So the CPSNs are establishing their communication, their database, and their network to make sure that they are on their distribution lists. I would, if they haven't had conversations with their CPSN leads, I would encourage them to do that. If they go to the DEW website and enter CPSNs, they will, on that page, they'll see the maps, they'll see the leads, their contact information. So I would encourage folks to that be step number one if they haven't done that already. Make sure that they get connected and find out who's on the team, because we've identified areas that we call chairs. And so folks that are focused in on programming, focused in on middle school, focused in on data. And so you're going to find that there are some people that are being intentionally trained in areas to be able to give that real technical support that we know is really important. So I would encourage everybody to do that. The other thing is that as you're going through this process, I think it's a really great exercise to learn what those pathways are in your region. So every school, as I said, is connected to a career CTPD. The planning district has programs that are different than the one to the school next door. They might be slightly different, but it's really important to understand what is going on in their region and especially locally, because it's done with intent. I mean, there will continue to evolve as workforce changes happen and we say, gee, we need more of this or that. And there'll be ongoing dialogue, but folks at the district level, to be really good support systems for students, the CPSNs will ensure that you're going to be made aware at the local level. But I would also encourage that to be a two-way street, because that's going to be this ongoing. It's not a one time, because things are going to change. There's going to be industry recognized credentials that are out there. We're going to start to see how those stack up, where a student might learn an entry level skill and earn a credential. But then what's next, and where does it lead to, and where are the job opportunities? So I would encourage folks to do as much learning about that as possible, or invite the CPSN folks to share that. The other thing that I think that is fundamental to this, as I mentioned it earlier, is about students' interest and aptitudes. The department is working hard to put a toolkit together in career connected learning, and that interest and aptitude conversation about what students like and don't like and what they're good at is really important to that conversation, and it will continue to evolve as well. So I would encourage that to be on the to-do list, to start to figure that out at the district level and then down to the building level. And that's then where that advisory and mentoring is critical. And so the professional development side of that, and that's how the CPSNs are going to be able to lend support, to the districts and at the building level. And so as those toolkits are developed and they come out in the next few months, that'll be a great resource for folks to connect and have those conversations at the district level. The other thing is that people have there's this, and I've seen it a lot recently, there's this great desire to create opportunities for kids. And I think that's fantastic. And I would encourage everybody to think about where are those businesses in your region that are the willing partners. The CPSN folks and the CTPD folks, they know those folks really, really well. Tap into that, to both of those groups. There's likely business advisory committees or any of the business groups that you have in your region. Tap into those folks, find out who's the willing partners for all of those things that we think about using our business community for, and all those career connected learning opportunities. And so that'll have a huge impact. And I would probably say that this is really a prime example of I like to use the adage of, you bring people together, it's a start. You get people to work together, it's progress. But success happens when we stay together. And so we have to start bringing these groups together, and then they start working on solutions. And then when they start to have success, it just makes it stronger and stronger. So it's a two-way street. Everybody's got to step up and do their part. And I'm really excited about where this is going. So hopefully that'll give everybody a little bit of a guidance to how to move forward.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Brian, so much for your time, for coming to tell us about CPSNs, how local districts and schools can be partnering with them. We will drop the contact information into the chat, and then we will also be able to answer any questions after this, if there are any. But thank you, Brian, so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
All right, Amy, Emily, Leah, I think we have a few moments if we have any questions or anything that you guys wanted to follow up with while I get the slides back up.
We do have Leah Amstutz here to answer any questions. So if there's any questions about career pathway support networks, please feel free to put them in the chat box.
I think we had some of the CPSN individuals register for today, so they might be on as well. If they have anything they want to share, or Leah wants to prompt them to say anything.
I mean, I would just say that we're super excited about the work that Brian's doing in this space and working collaboratively with all of the leads at these career pathway support networks. And really, this is an important strategy as we continue to show and work to have alignment on the local level to really meet the needs of workforce development. And so we've invested a lot of time and energy into this space because we feel that it's very, very important as we continue to provide more access for students.
Practicing my wait time to see if we have any questions. If you do think of something after we move on, please put it in the chat, but we will go ahead and move on to our next topic. Thank you, Leah, for being on, and thank you, Amy and Emily, for making sure that we had a message from Brian.
There was one comment in the chat box. I don't know if folks saw it, that John said that he'd like to have a CPS individual come see his classroom to make sure it's aligning closely. So pass this information along.
John. Okay, so John is actually on the panel. He'll be coming next. And John, you would reach out to Katie Good. So I will make sure that you guys are linked up when I get off of the call today. I'll actually just shoot you her contact information. Thanks for catching that, Melinda. All right, our next topic is our transition to work endorsement panel, and we're going to kick this over to Amy. She's going to help facilitate this, and I'm going to stop sharing just so that hopefully you guys can see who's talking on this panel. So we should have Molly, John, and Brandy on. So make sure you guys have your videos on, please.
Lydia, I think I will go ahead then and get started. I would like to have our panel presenters first introduce themselves if they could. So I think we'll start with, let's see who's first on the slide. We'll have you start with Molly. Molly, if you want to introduce yourself.
Morning, I'm Molly Gregg. I work at the Medina County Career Center. This is my 7th year over here, and I put myself in as a JTC, but I wear many hats. I facilitate, along with one of my colleagues, aptitude assessment for the county, and then oversee one of our non-recruitment programs here at the Career Center.
Great. Molly, thank you so much for joining us. And John, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm John Ishii. I work in Switzerland River Ohio Local School District. I am on the Woodsfield campus. I'm an intervention specialist, but I also have, as part of my intervention, PAYS lab, where we work on, assessing and exploring careers and then training for them. And basically, our goal is to prepare them for what their next role is going to be, whether it's going to be going to our career center in district or whether it's going to be stay here and prepare for a career after they graduate.
Wonderful. Great. Welcome, John. And Brandy.
Hi, Brandy Regula. I'm an occupational therapist. I work for Ridgewood Local Schools. I was with an ESC for probably about 10 years, and I've been with Ridgewood now for 3. So.
Right. Well, we have a wonderful panel today, and each of these individuals share one very important connection, and that is that they all have the transition to work endorsement. If you are not familiar with the endorsement, it is, I'm going to click my share right here, so you'll see a link to the department's web page that talks about the endorsement. But the endorsement is an opportunity for individuals with an Ohio educator license to gain skills and knowledge about how to best prepare our students with disabilities. And honestly, I would argue all of our students to better prepare for competitive integrated employment. post-secondary education and training and independent living after they graduate. So we've got a great variety of ways in which these individuals are going to share what they have learned from the endorsement. You'll see when you click on the link that the endorsement is available for individuals who have, as I mentioned, an Ohio license, whether they are an intervention specialist, a career technical license, a career technical provider, or relatively new is our professional pupil services license, which is where individuals such as Randy, or I'm sorry, that was a combination of your first and last name, Brandy, come in with the occupational therapy background, also available for school counselors. So we're really excited to bring in a lot of different individuals to the transition to work endorsement opportunity. You will find on the website as well that there are 5 university providers for the endorsement. So you can click on the links of the contacts to learn more about the individual courses that are offered at those universities. We do also, through the department, currently offer an opportunity for course credit reimbursement. It is definitely based on availability of funds, so it's not something that we can guarantee will always happen for individuals who are enrolled in the courses, but we've been very thrilled to be able to offer at least up to 3 course credit reimbursement funds for at least, gosh, I think it's almost been 10 years now. So a lot of individuals we've been able to support in their endorsement. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to me directly. All right. So, all of that being said, I want to get into everything about you all. And there's really not a first person who has to go, and whoever feels compelled to jump in can definitely do that. I'm going to start with what inspired you to pursue transition to work endorsement? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll break the ice, I guess.
Thanks, John.
So, it was part of when we just started the PAYS program, that was part of the requirement for us was to go and get CBI and TTW endorsement. And so that was part of the reason, but I also have a passion for preparing kids for after school, after their education.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that I was prepared as best as I could to get them ready because so many, especially of our special education population, it was just like, let's just get them through school instead of let's give them some kind of a future. And that's what my goal was to prepare them for their future. So.
Wonderful. Right. It's not just getting them to that graduation. It's beyond, right? So through graduation. Love that. Thank you so much. Brandy or Molly, would either of you like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. I guess my background's a little bit different since I'm an occupational therapist. I've always been interested in transition, and I had the opportunity. There were some students on my caseload who were at a career center. And in that classroom, it was really exciting to see how the teacher and I could work collaboratively to help a student be independent in certain life skill tasks and how that translated when they went out to on-the-job training experiences. So that kind of sparked my interest in this. And then here at the district, just through some staff changes, we realized there wasn't really anybody meeting with our vocational rehab counselor from OOD. And I feel like that's a very valuable resource. So I kind of took on that role and coordinated all of our student meetings with our vocational rehab counselor. And so that's kind of how I got excited about the transition to work endorsement.
Thank you. Thank you. We were really thrilled to, as I mentioned earlier, to bring that professional pupil professional pupil services license into the mix because we know that OTs and speech and school counselors have so much to offer. So thank you for pursuing that. Brandy, do you want to share your inspiration, please? I'm sorry, not Brandy, Molly. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I looked right at Brandy. Molly.
They're close. I worked really closely with the transition coordinator at my previous district, and I had some opportunities to serve as a long-term sub for that individual. And it just kind of opened my eyes. I was, at that time co-teaching an English class, and I worked with these students that I kind of call my gray area kids. The push for the longest time was college bound. And there's this whole group of students that have so much to offer and a skill set, and they can be really, they can benefit strongly from having something individualized for themselves. So like Dr. Bontempo said in the video, that for me was just kind of how I could prepare for the next opportunity to make an impact. And I just kind of saw it as being the next big push in education. So I pursued it back in, I think, 2018, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. Wonderful. I also wanted to add one of the things I didn't mention when we were discussing kind of the overview is that it really is a local decision as to whether or not a school wants to require someone to have the transition to work endorsement. It is something that we do require for individuals who are working as a job training coordinator. But other than that, it really is just up to, the individual school and of course the individual. So all of you three taking advantage of this opportunity is just so exciting and so refreshing. So thank you first and foremost for going for it. um, could one of you or all of you share an example of really how you applied what you learned into your classroom or your lab or a work-based setting, wherever you would like to, kind of provide an example around?
So in my classroom, we don't work just on the exploration and the actual skills. We work on like soft skills, such as, behaviors that are expected at workplace, and also on time compliance too. So like what they need, being able to meet industry standard times. And after they've been in and have completed so much, we try to get them out into the workforce. Now, COVID made that difficult. But we look like we're going to be able to get back to that now. We have some partners locally that are going to get us to be able to take some students out into the workforce a little bit for a couple periods a day. But like a success story I can think of is a student that I had that nobody ever thought he would be able to do anything. We got to the point where we took him to a cabinetry manufacturer, and he worked there, ended up through his schoolwork being offered a summer job, went to the vocational school and actually completed a certification for maritime, to work on the river. And now he is a full-time employee on a riverboat, after graduation on the High River. So, that's a great success story. I wish that they were all like that, but we've had several. So, and I like to think that our program has contributed to that.
Excellent. And I'm going to just build on that. So Brandy and Molly, just hold for 1 second. You kind of alluded to the idea you're working on the soft skills and you're kind of, working on helping them establish next steps. Is there a specific strategy that you found more or less, helpful as you're doing that?
So we are routine based. So that they come in and it's just like a job and they come to our classroom. They actually clock in and out. They, know where they have to go to get their work assignments, and it's already assigned for them. They don't have to wait for us to tell them what to do. And then they go through those routines. They know how to call for assistance if they need it. We jot down accommodations and anything that they might need assistance wise to be able to complete them, to be able to pass on for the vocational school or for employment. But I think the biggest thing is the reinforcement of the expected behaviors. Like they have a behavior checklist that they're expected to do, so they can refer to that in case they're ever wondering, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it's all workplace based. And then, we give them feedback on a daily and weekly basis on that, whether they are meeting all those, whether, if there was any they didn't meet, what they needed to do to correct that behavior, and so on.
So routine, reinforcement, that's wonderful. Does anyone else want to jump in and add an example and kind of maybe even weave in some of those strategies that you found successful?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what John just shared. I think that our most success, and to give everyone some context, we have 3 levels of JTC here at the Medina County Career Center, and I work with our most mild. I'm actually out in this year 18 career technical labs, so I'm not providing small group direct instruction. I go out and I serve as a resource in our tech programming. So it's the least supported in terms of JTC programming. But across the 3 levels, I think that I would generally start by saying that we try not to carve too many opportunities. We like to get our students comfortable with being uncomfortable. And one of the biggest factors in success is really driving or steering them towards opportunities that support their pins. And I think that that's an ever evolving situation. We all know how hard it is to hit the ground and find business partners in the community who are willing to bring our students on. Oftentimes it's a weird window of time because we're dealing with their school day and things like that. But the more work we can do to find opportunities that first and foremost are of interest to our students. John mentioned the student that went to the cabinetry shop, and that's kind of where it all started. If they're not motivated by it, it's going to be an uphill battle for everyone, including that student. So we really try to focus on what's of interest to them, finding a business partner to bring on, and kind of fostering that interest so that they can find something that naturally they want to show up every day and do for work, or we might find an avenue connected to it, etc. So a lot of our success stories are because of those kind of niche opportunities where students are able to go out and do something that they're truly enjoying, and they're not just coming to do programming just to do it because it's a pathway.
Right. Exactly. Love that. Love that individualization. That's so important, right?
Tag on.
John, go ahead. Yeah,
if
please.
I can tag on to what she said, I think that's a huge piece is finding their interest. It's like when we talked about the cabinetry, they got out there. I don't think really they knew what to expect. And then they find out that they're building these cabinets for, Winnebago for one, and then Starbucks for another, so that really piqued their interest, not realizing that those were made, for those kind of situations. And then we've actually incorporated something new into our program over the last year and a half. We have a virtual reality system, and it has opened up it's very lifelike, and it has opened up a world of opportunities for exploration on the jobs and training that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And so, like, I've been able to demonstrate kids changing oil in a car, or changing brake pads, just for an example of one kind of thing. So they could find out if they actually enjoyed it, but it also would display to the teachers, at the vocational center, hey, these kids can do this.
That's great. Well, and that relevance, right, for them to see exactly the work that they're doing and how it's going to be applied and impact. That's so awesome. Thank you. It looks like you've already got some fans too. John, people want your behavior checklist, so thank you. Let's see, Brandy, would you like to jump in? And I also see that there's a question there, but I'll come back to that in a minute for Ed. Yep.
So I guess my experience would be more on a district level. So through a lot of the assignments and things that I had to complete for part of the program, I really looked at what were the strengths and weaknesses, as far as what were the needs for staff, maybe what were the needs for parents. So I did a lot of surveys and got a lot of feedback, and how we could improve certain things for transitioning and graduation, and just the knowledge and the background and things that staff and parents needed. So through that opportunity, I was able to create some resources to kind of help staff. We added some new forms during IEP meetings to kind of help parents understand the graduation requirements, where their student was at and where they needed to go next. So yeah, it just allowed me to really look at a district level what our needs were and create some resources to help staff and just help improve our team.
Right. And I think you did something really important. I know we often gather a lot of data, but do we really respond to it, right? And kind of take it to that next level and build those resources shaped around the information that's provided. So yeah, thank you for going that direction. Definitely helpful, I'm sure. I'm seeing, okay, it looks like John is exchanging his number. Okay, it looks like a lot of virtual reality stuff is coming in for questions. John, do you want to jump in? I'm not sure if all those questions, I saw one from Ed about software. Just want to make sure we got that one answered.
I may have missed everything, but I can give you a background on the software. It's called Transfer VR. It's not cheap. I can tell you our contract is $15,000 a year. That's for 5 headsets. It does both the career exploration, where they have, I think it's up to 52 or 53 different jobs to explore now, but we also have 300 and some training simulations for different jobs as well. I can tell you, I did all the research on it, and I presented it to our board to get approved, and it has been everything and more than what I had expected. It's super easy to use. What's nice is not only can I see it on my computer to be able to walk them through something that they might get stuck on, or to be able to see their progress, it actually gives me feedback and data that I can put into both their IEPs and any other information they may need, whether to pass on to an employee or pass on to the vocational school. And it also, a nice little thing is I've been able to cast it when they're on there in my room. So those students that may not have gotten to that or may not got to explore that job can actually see them working on it as they're doing it with the headset on.
Sounds incredible. It looks like a lot of people are going to be looking more towards that. Let's see, Melissa. Right, perfect. So it looks like Melissa and the other CTPD consultants will facilitate making sure that the behavior checklist that John mentioned and the information about the transfer VR will be shared. And then, oh, yeah, and there's a Padlet that it could also go on. And then any other resources that we mentioned today, we'll make sure that you have access to, everyone. So thank you. This is great. Brandy, I'm gonna start with you on this one, and I do mean Brandy, not Molly. Can you talk a little bit more about the partnerships that you've built with families, employers, and agencies, and community organizations? You mentioned those surveys that you did. So kind of how did that move into partnerships?
Yeah, I guess I'll go with families and parents first. I was kind of surprised at the lack of knowledge for transition planning specifically, and then even some of the graduation requirements. Parents aren't always knowing what exactly their student needs to complete in order to meet the graduation requirements. So in doing some of those forms and discussing those at every IEP meeting, I think we've really helped parents understand that completely. And then also recognizing where their student is, and if they don't meet certain requirements, what are other options available to them. And so that's been really helpful, especially freshman, sophomore year as they're planning maybe to go to the Career Center, things like that. And then also with staff, just helping to give them more resources. We did some transition binders so that those will carry on with each student as they transition each year. And most likely they're having a different intervention specialist each year. So that's really helped bridge the gap with making sure all of our resources are aligned and we're meeting the students' needs and making new changes each year to our IEPs.
Wonderful.
And then also with outside agencies, I would say I've just learned a lot about different agencies that are available. I've had a lot of conversations with Board of DD, OOD, New Hope Industries. So we've had some students that have worked with job training and coaching with New Hope Industries, also the Fuse Network. So just learning about those resources that are available to students has really helped open our eyes, I guess, as far as what we need to be doing on the IEPs and helping intervention specialists be aware of those resources that are available.
Thank you. And we know, right? We know that research tells us if we have our students, connected to 3 to 6 agency partners, that they're going to have a much bigger predictor of post-school success. So I think, that endorsement is definitely allowing everyone to learn more about the resources, not only locally, but then state and nationally, I would say. So that really help with those partnerships. Thanks, Brandy. Molly or John, do you want to jump in and mention how you're building partnerships?
Just a lot of open communication, constant communication. The more that we can be out in the community with our students, the better. We are big fans of doing site visits if it's of student interest. We might find, out in our animal care program, something that just one student wants to go see, and we'll take that one student to go out on a site visit. And that gets our name, our faces out there. They know who we are, so that if we call at some point and ask if there's any opportunities, right, they've already met us. We also, on the front end, we'll get to know our families as much as we can before the student is actually on site here at the Career Center with us. So after our admissions process, we are active members as case managers for the next school year and participating in, what's the word I'm looking for? IEP meetings to amend, there we go, for services to transition over here to the Career Center. So we meet our families in advance. Majority of those students, I, myself, or my colleague, Mrs. Johnson, will meet during the aptitude assessment process. So the more FaceTime those students can get with us before they're in our building, we think fosters more success. So maintaining relationships after establishing them prior to the student being with us has been a really nice opportunity. And I think that we see, them stay in the programming if it's really what they want to be doing, more so than if we would have just welcomed them over like all of their typical peers to this big new building with all of these new faces. We like to establish a relationship before they come over so that they, experience more success and retention.
Absolutely right. And when we've established that trust, those relationships, that's just going to lead to success. Family engagement, also a predictor of post-school success. So definitely ensuring that we have those connections. Let's see. So Brandy's, I'm checking the chat as we're going along. So Brandy, you're sharing information about New Hope. And then Katie has asked, are you able to do vocational assessments prior to them attending? I think that's probably for Molly.
Yes, so those are a countywide service that we offer here in Medina, but typically they are referral based through one of our mainly 6, sometimes 7 sending districts. So at the end of the school year, we'll release a calendar of dates, and our transition coordinators will sign up for dates and then usually send us 10th graders. Occasionally we'll get a 9th grader, but it's also a nice opportunity for students in the community who are homeschooled to come out so that we can measure their aptitudes and things like that. But we do, I'm going to say 99% of the time, aptitude assessment as a 10th grader. Occasionally, if a student is maybe struggling in a lab and they have not sat through that process, we might work with one of our students here at the Career Center and go through that just so that we can collect more information about him or her. But that's something that's typically done during the student's 10th grade year.
Oh, and it looks like what's the aptitude tool and which vocational assessments. I'll let you guys answer those. I do want to just mention, so it sounds, Molly, also though, that it looks like all of your students have access to these assessments. So not just our students with disabilities or everyone?
They do
Yeah,
all
got
have
it.
access, but I will say that the majority of the students that we test, again, like 99%, are students who are identified because they are coming over on a referral basis from a transition coordinator. A lot of our associate schools use that as a transition activity, which kind of helps with that backward planning process. They know that they can put that on as an activity, send us that 10th grader so that we're getting all of that good information. It's about like a 12 or 13 page report that we issue back. Currently, we're using SAM software. I think it was released around the time I was born. So I would personally like to see something newer develop. That's, I think, another trend that we're working towards, which excites me. My coworker in my office and I are actually working to put individualized skills assessments together for the 24 programs that we have here at the Career Center. So they are hands-on and aptitude-based, and that will give us better indicators when students tell us what programs they're interested in, of really where their skills align to that specific industry. Because a lot of the current transition assessment resources are based on like the 16 pathway umbrellas, but there's been a big shift with that too. So we're personally moving to become more relevant in terms of what we're offering, how the industries are changing and rapidly developing so that we can kind of continue to shift with that and keep things relevant also.
Good. Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat. John, I know we haven't touched on you yet as far as building partnerships. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, the only thing I'd really add to what everybody else is the networking part of it. You'd be surprised how many people that know people that are in the business, and can get you connected. Like my assistant principal, is related to our local car dealership. So able to help me get, in there, to start placing students in as far as that goes. We've partnered with Respects. We do a holiday food drive for needy families, partner with Respects. Through that partnership, we were able to develop a plan to start getting some of our students down there working because they're always looking to hire and can't find people to hire. So, make sure that you understand that whoever you're talking to might be a connection to the next, partnership to use with. So
that's great advice. I'm also going to do a plug for your business advisory councils. I know that this mentions, other partnerships, but your business advisory councils that are in your traditional schools. Definitely have connections, obviously, with all of the local businesses where you can really start to form some relationships around not just work experiences, but also career advising and things of that nature. So if you haven't had a chance and you're working within a traditional school setting, check out your business advisory councils. And of course, we know that our career pathway support networks are going to be super helpful with us in building those partnerships and making relationships. So exactly, you kind of have to be have your eyes always open, right, John, to make sure that you can see those opportunities when they or make some even if you haven't noticed that they're that they're there yet, right? Just always be ready. All righty.
One
I know,
question real
John, you
quick.
had shared a six. Oh, sorry. Here's
I'm
someone's
sorry,
going
this
to
is
jump in.
Katie Foy again. I'm just kind of
Oh,
following
sure,
up a
Katie,
little
sure.
bit. Yeah. So Molly, so after you do these assessments, are you able to do it in time where if or these aptitude tests that a student maybe was thinking, I'm just going to pick welding was the spot that they want to do. After you did it, you realize, no, buddy, this is not. It would be more like auto services. Like, is that the time that you're able to switch? But because like I know on our end, our labs are full, so we're not able to actually then get them in the appropriate program. So now we have the testing or you have the information that says like, hey, welding may not be your best choice. Do kids then unenroll if there's not another program, or do they just try to continue to get through it?
So just so that I'm clear on what you're asking, do you mean incoming students that we're recruiting, or if we have a current student on site?
Incoming students, the
Incoming.
students after you did the aptitude,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. So we'll test about 100 10th graders a year, and that's because the calendar that we open of dates gives us enough time prior to our application season to get all of that information sent over to our transition coordinators. So the breakdown of all of that information at the end will include our recommendations. First and foremost, if we're saying this is maybe a JTC, candidate. So maybe we're looking at a student who needs more structure, more support, and would be a good work-based learning candidate, or based on how their aptitudes break down and what their correlation is to the 24 programs that we have on site, we can let them know like, hey, these are all good correlations, so this would likely be a really positive or successful match. You wanted welding, it doesn't look like it's most strong. Hand in hand with that, we also implemented a new interest survey that is based on the 24 programs here. They're not identified on the survey, so students just blindly go through and tell us what they do or do not like. And then we can, based on that, see interest-wise what their top programs of choice would be. Because like, I'll get kids who want animal care because they really like dogs. They don't realize that we're working with like small fish up to equine size animals, right? So they might come in thinking they want animal care, but actually they score highest in, let's say, chef and restaurant. So part of our process too, we actually bring them out all day. Half of the day they're testing with myself or Mrs. Johnson, and the other half of the day they're splitting between 2 lab visits. We like to do that because we also host a sophomore visitation that all of the 10th graders in the county come to, but that's exciting, right? They come out, they see the robots and engineering, and they're cooking things in chef. We bring them out on a typical school day. They might see that our students are taking web exams. We've had students realize that our kids do CPR testing and they want nothing to do with it. So exposing them to real scenarios and getting them to understand that, yes, we have hands-on, but we also have the theory portion of lab. You might be sitting through a lecture and taking notes, things like that. So we like to give them a real day in the life of a student too, and then we welcome them back out for sophomore visitation. And while that's happening behind the scenes, we're issuing all of that data to our transition coordinators so that they can use that to help that student make some informed choices with that as a tool.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more follow-up question. So is this happening before the application process?
Yes.
Okay.
So we just finished our testing season. Because of the awesome Northeast Ohio weather, we had to push them back. But what we did in that scenario is we honored if a student came in and applied for something after issuing the report, if internally we need to change something on their application, we can do that and still honor when they submitted their application.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I was muted, sorry. Thank you so much, Katie, for asking those questions. And I see some other questions about vocational assessments. I'm going to allow those conversations to kind of happen outside of this discussion. So I think we've got Brandy and Molly and John's email addresses. So if you want to continue to follow up with them on that piece, I think that would be wonderful. Let's see. So I want to make sure I can see if there's any additional. Oh, let's see. Is that a cue with this
Just
slide?
bringing it back up so that we can.
Got you.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you. I was like, I wasn't sure if that was something else, but like, oh, is that the hook? Thank you. Yeah, make sure we drop those addresses in there and we'll make those connections as we move forward. Thank you. Let's see. So we've talked a lot about strategies. We've talked about partnerships, successes. Is there any other strategy or example of how you've used your transition to work endorsement knowledge within your respective roles that you'd like to share before we kind of get into kind of the advice on why others should kind of follow that path? So, any other strategies that you've learned that you want to share about?
A big one for me, again, just because I'm out in so many programs. Um, my program, career training, was designed to provide more support for mild to moderate, maybe level students in tech programming. But what we have found over the last couple of years is that really I'm a resource for our teachers. They are able to have a sounding board, someone to throw ideas off of, come to if they're not sure how to work with a certain student, things like that. So on the, again, kind of behind the scenes side, if I'm working closely with those instructors to educate them on what this looks like, our students often demonstrate more success because there's more understanding. We're able to kind of be more flexible, make some modifications for individual students and things like that. So really for me, it's about networking and having a community with my fellow educators to support those students, because a lot of what we do when we get it right is high interest for the kids. So they're already motivated. So really we've become, I would say, more of a resource for our instructors.
Great, thanks. John or Brandy, anything you want to add to that?
I guess I would say just focusing, and a lot of times we don't think about it, but the self-advocacy portion for students. I had a student that was on my caseload in the 5th grade, and she's a senior now, and she had some vision deficits. And so on the surface, you wouldn't have really noticed that those deficits really impacted her ability to complete everyday tasks. And it was really on her to let the teachers know when she could or couldn't do certain things and request those accommodations. So recognizing what her IEP accommodations were and asking for those was really important for her. And now she's looking at going to college. And so recognizing it's going to be on you to promote for yourself what you're going to need and apply for those accommodations. So I think just that self-advocacy piece is something that's huge that we might not always think about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, another predictor, right? So that's fantastic. Great. All right. Well, I think we'll move into our last question. So any of you, whoever wants to jump in first, in your view, what would be your advice or the driving reason for someone to pursue the endorsement? What should they know about it, and what would be your advice?
I'm just going to kind of echo what I said earlier. It's like, why are we in these positions? If we're not in these positions to give our students an opportunity to have independence and success after school, then why are we doing what we're doing? So if any additional tool that you can acquire to help them with that, I think is a benefit. While I'm not going to tell you that every student that I've worked with has been a success story. We've had several, and I know when I talk to the individual instructors at our vocational facility, they've said the information that I've been able to pass on to them has allowed them to have more successes with some of these students than what they've had in the past with others that may have had the same deficits. So I think that's an important thing, that to understand that not every student's the same, as we know. But there's ways that they can have success if we give them the right tools.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying that not only are you a resource to your students by providing them with, the best quality instruction, but yet also to your partners in your schools and your agency partners as well, because you've got that knowledge now to really pass along.
Absolutely. Well, in my role specifically, I'm the only one around here that does what I do. So, I have a lot more detailed information than what a survey can, provide, especially for transition for a student. We're still fighting that battle, getting everybody on board to using that information. But, those that I have been able to get to buy in and take that information have found it a big benefit.
Great. Thank you. That's great to hear. I know the great work happening out there. Thank you. Brandy, Molly, what's your advice or something we should help people know about the endorsement?
I agree with John, and I just saw, I think it's Kelly who commented going through Bowling Green. I went through Bowling Green. It's attainable. It was not terribly difficult to manage as a working mom and parent. So I appreciate that it's attainable. And again, if you can do something to better your knowledge and understanding to help those individual students, like John said, why not? And again, going back to the common theme of being a resource for our educators, if we have more knowledge and understanding of why our students are linked with certain agencies and how and why they qualify for those agencies' support, it makes it a lot easier to drive those conversations about why we're asking our lab instructors, for example, to accommodate or modify the way that we are, because not everybody across the board, typical students included, is going to go out and get the highest level of job. But if we know specifically what our students' skill set is, what makes them exceptional on the front end, then that can drive really what we're focusing with them on the lab side of things to give them the best shot for success as possible for them individually.
Yeah, I would agree with Molly and John on everything that they said. I also did Bowling Green, and I really liked that everything was online. So it allowed me to still work full time and complete all of those courses. And I would just say, as many of us know, we all wear many hats. And so I think I just learned a lot through that program, and just bringing that to the district and allowing us to just continue to work together as a team to help support our students be successful, helping them to recognize different opportunities, maybe seeing things that they didn't think were possible, for different jobs and opportunities after high school. So I would just encourage everyone to think about that as far as the transition to work endorsement.
And I'm going to throw one more thing out there. I wasn't going to, but sometimes you're going to find opposition or just people that aren't going to buy in. And when you can throw something at them and say, well, this is how I know, tell me how you don't know, that a lot of times will shut them down and get them to buy in. Now, like I said earlier, not everyone's on board yet, but I've got more and more going that way because they can't argue with me whenever I have the data to show them.
You've got the research behind it. Great. Thank you. And I know Lydia just wrote a lot of great stuff about the structure that you have. Great, great work. So I just want to give a huge thank you to the three of you for the work that you're doing, for championing the transition to work endorsement, and for sharing your successes with all of us. Yes, the transition to work endorsement is offered at 5 different universities. So it's offered at Bowling Green State University, the University of Toledo, University of Cincinnati, Xavier University, and Kent State University. So there are 5 partners, and we do work regularly together. I meet with them often. We talk about programming, and they're just so passionate about the work they're doing and definitely want to be engaged with you as well. So definitely think about those opportunities. Let's see. So I'm going to, again, John and Brandy and Molly, you guys are rock stars. Thank you so much. I am going to lead the whole group then in a reflection to think about based on, thank you, Chelsea, based on the transition to work TTW panel discussion that we've just had, what is one practical strategy that you heard that you'll try to implement or adapt in your program to improve a student's transition outcome? So give you all a second to reflect on that. Feel free to drop it in the chat too if you are so moved to do so.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to those on our panel. That was very informative, and our chat's blowing up. So I know that you were able to give some great information out to our audience. To help us keep on track, we still have a couple really good presenters, and we want to be respectful of their time. So we're going to go ahead and move ahead. So please keep having those conversations in the chat. And I believe that the 3 panelists did put their email in there so that they don't get lost in the chat. Maybe just shoot them an email so they can email you back, because I think between Molly and John, you guys probably have about 30, 40 emails, and then Brandy had some in there too, some requests. So let's try to keep that manageable for our panelists. So again, thank you all so much. Great information. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Stacia.
Thanks, Lydia. And thanks to Amy, Molly, Brandy, and John. That was great. And I really appreciate that you all took your time out of the day to share your experiences with the TTW. Next, we have up Tina Saley from Portage Lakes Career Center, who also has her TTW, and Andrea Townsend and Amanda Wiseman from Tri-County Career Center. Tina will be talking about their positive behavior intervention supports, and Amanda and Andrea will be sharing their early warning intervention and monitoring system. Tina, are you ready to take it away?
Okay, can you hear me? Hopefully. I was just thinking how cool and strange it is that we can do this on a Zoom. It's like the one good thing that came out of COVID. I think if Stacia had asked me to do a presentation in front of 150 people, I would have said no, thank you. But for some reason, it feels a little bit more comfortable, even though it also kind of feels like you're talking to yourself. I'm Tina Saley. I'm the assistant principal here at Portage Lakes Career Center. We are in Summit County, real close to the Akron-Canton Airport, if you're familiar with that. We serve 4 home schools, about 600 high school students each year. And PBIS is a huge passion of mine. And I just would really encourage any career center who isn't grabbing a hold of a PBIS program to really rethink it. And I'm going to try to give you some tips and tricks, things that I think have helped it to be successful for us. So at PLCC, our recipe for success is hard work, kindness, and responsibility. So if you're not familiar with PBIS, it's just a proactive, like a positive approach to teaching and supporting student behavior, just like we teach everything else. I think at career centers, we do a really good job of setting clear behavior expectations. And we really frame everything around the workplace and, sort of like adult expectations. I think sometimes we fall short with reinforcing the behavior expectations whenever they're met. Sometimes we forget that they are teenagers still. And then, the last component is just addressing those behavior challenges with tiered interventions or just something different, right? Not just the same old things that we are accustomed to in terms of discipline, but what are some other things that we could do to actually try to change behavior? Because I think anybody who is doing the discipline knows that it doesn't always feel good and it doesn't always feel like it's going to actually make a change. And that doesn't sit well with me. So that's, why I think I get so jazzed up about PBIS. So just to give you sort of our background in PBIS, where we've been and where we are now. We started with the training long ago in 2014, and we started with just a physical token economy. Just for that tier 1. And all of the things that I say today, please just know, just start somewhere. It takes a couple people who want to do this positive work, you know, the desire to do it and just starting from the ground. And you're just gonna, the kind of thing that's gonna grow from there. So one of the biggest things that I would tell you is don't be like us. We already had the character counts pillars in place. There's 6 of them. That wasn't a great strategy. You know, just like when we started our Zoom, I noticed we started with some PBIS strategies. It was be respectful, be responsible, be a problem solver. Just, you know, short and sweet. And I can't emphasize that enough. So after we did the physical tokens, we moved to a QR code system, which was it was definitely better than the physical tokens, because we got a little bit of data. We were able to actually see, you know, we could get data related to what teachers were using the program, what program, you know, what students were getting acknowledged more than others. But it still wasn't as good as what we're doing now, which is, and I am not a spokesperson for PBIS rewards, but I really, really like the program. It's kind of like, it was like the thing that I wished existed, and then it came to fruition. And I'll show you a little bit inside of that program. If it advances for me, there we go. I think one of the challenges that we have in career tech is that, you know, a lot of people on this call could be career tech teachers, people who maybe came from an industry who worked in that real world with real world adult expectations and then became a teacher. And, you know, sometimes that's tough to convince. It's tough to convince that teacher that this is important. And so I can't emphasize to you enough. You know, maybe we don't even talk about it as this PBIS thing, because I think that gets like, it gets K-12 a little bit, right? Where I think it's most important to think about it as school culture. Everybody wants to go to a school where they feel supported, staff and students. So I like to frame all of the positive things that we do around school culture and say, you guys know this is PBIS, right? And I also like to just remind teachers that, you know, if we know that when our boss shows us that they appreciate a job well done, we're going to work harder for them. You know, and if, you know, a student thinks that you don't like them, if a student thinks that you're mad at them because they made a really big mistake and got in really big trouble, when they come back, if they think, you know, there's a smudge on them and you don't like them, they're not going to work very hard for you. But if you take that opportunity to recognize them the first time that they, you know, they do something right, all of a sudden that relationship is built or is rebuilding, and you know, they know that you're giving them the fair shake. And again, in career tech, yes, you know, we're talking about school culture, but I think it really helps to frame it too around work culture. You know, our PBIS behaviors are what our students told us it takes to be a good employee, a good student, a good adult. Everybody knows you got to work hard at work. You got to be kind, and you got to be responsible. So some of our teachers sort of frame it around like their PBIS points are their paycheck or a bonus for a job well done. And, you know, I think it's just really important that, you know, particularly your admin just absolutely refuse to accept that, you know, that old mentality that, oh, well, they should be doing it anyway. Why are we, you know, acknowledging students for behaviors that are expected? If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got, right? It's not working. So, you know, we all should be showing up to work every single day, but we all really appreciate, you know, when there's a attendance incentive or things like that. So framing the conversation around work with students and staff, I think, is really helpful. So I tried to give you guys some shortcuts because I know it can be really overwhelming. And I'm, you know, we'll share this out. I'm sure this, and there's embedded links so that you can kind of use some of my little tips and tricks and shortcuts. But the first thing I would do if you have nothing is pull your student, staff, and families too. You know, what are the behaviors that you think are required to be successful? Start just a simple Google form. And I gave you an example there. And again, I'm not paid by PBIS rewards, but I just really like it that much. It's succinct. It has tier 1, tier 2. It has staff and teacher PBIS. They have a hall pass thing added. We don't currently use it, but I'm very intrigued. And reports, lots and lots of reports. And even a parent communication component where parents can see the comments that your teachers are giving your students, which I think is so cool. The other really important thing is identifying who's going to be helping with this, right? You need physical help. I think it's so essential that there is an admin lead. And yes, anybody who's gone through PBIS training knows there's supposed to be this beautiful team, right? And we've heard on this call, a lot of people use the term many hats, and that is just indicative of CTE, whether you're big or small, I think it is. But you gotta have an admin who is going to be looking at the reports and who is going to be sharing some of that data, just to ensure fidelity. Like we are looking at this. Are we using this program? And if we're not, then why? And follow up on that. And just some support staff to help. I have awesome admin assistants right outside of my office. They help me to fill orders and things like that with the tier 1 stuff. And obviously you need financial support. I'm super blessed because our central office supports this work. They recognize that a positive school culture is good for everybody. And I think it's also relevant to point out we're career tech, right? We have a recruiting component to our work. And oftentimes students will come to us ready for something different, and ready for a fresh start, and, just want to have a different, more positive experience. And that's no diss to their homeschool. It's just whatever their experience is, they're ready for something new. And I feel like this ties very closely into that work. And lastly, you need a relentless belief that this work is important, even when, the kids make big, bad decisions sometimes still. This is just a little glimpse into some of the things that we have going on. We use, again, PBIS rewards. We did Student of the Month stuff. We do, some of the basic things that I'm sure many of you also do. We also use a program called Suite 360, and I'll show you that. This is just kind of a glimpse into what PBIS rewards looks like the dashboard for the teacher. It's succinct, like I said, so it automatically groups all your kids into their classes. It's really easy to go in and acknowledge kids. You can upload student faces or pictures from like a Life Touch upload. Obviously, they don't have these great emoji faces, but we're protecting the innocent here. And it's actually a really great way, my teachers tell me, to learn their students' names at the beginning of the year. So it's a pretty cool tool. You can, select the whole class. Oh my gosh, we did this really great review game. You guys did amazing. I'm going to select everybody. This student, and that student were absent today. And then I can add a comment. Wow, great work on your review. And it's fast. So, my teachers really appreciate that. The students have a portal. There's an app that parents can log in very easily, again, through an app or through online. There's tier 2, which is awesome. We don't use it a ton, but, for some students who need more regular positive adult interactions, it has a built-in tier 2 system where students can, you can have whoever the adult is that they're checking in and checking out with, identify goals for that student to work on. And then when they check out with them, they can, talk about how did you do with these goals today? And then they can award them points within the check-in, check-out. That's just sort of another view, like where they would be going over. Did you respond calmly today? Did you check out with your focus teacher? And, you can do either yes or no, or, it can be more of a conversation like, how calm did we remain today, and that kind of thing. And again, parents can see the progress, which I think is so cool. The teacher reward part, I think, really helps with some of the teacher buy-in, because again, it just emphasizes that we all like working in a place that is positive. So, teachers, just by logging in and awarding students, they earn their own stars, and it has its own little sort of platform where they can give each other shout outs, and they can use their stars to go into just simple raffles for, jeans days and dress downs for their classroom, donut parties and things like that. We have the Woot Woot Wagon. That's something we started last year. This is on the left side, you'll see just like a little shout out and our staff are amazing. This has really, I think, contributed some of the buy-in. They go out regularly just saying, thank you for doing this, oh, thank you for letting my kids come in. I think just recently we had the welding teacher invited some automotive students in who didn't get into the welding class, but they want to learn a little bit of welding. And so they used, some student helpers. They taught them just a little bit of welding, and the teacher was so appreciative. So then, my big burly welding teacher goes out and oh my gosh, he's the wootiest of the woots. He is constantly going out giving shout outs on this thing. So they give each other little spotlights, and then about once a week, if I can, I go around to the different classrooms and I read them. And then the teachers get to, spin for a prize. It's mostly just like food and things like that. But it's fun and it's a celebration. And again, it's positive. And then when I acknowledge the teacher, hey, Mr. Mariana is recognizing Mr. Bayless for his kindness, because again, we're pulling in that behavior that we're trying to reinforce. They get to choose a student in their class who, most recently has also demonstrated that kindness, and they get to come up and, do whatever game it is that we're doing. I'm not going to click on it just for the sake of time, but this DCM Woot Woot Wagon video is a must-see. My design, communication, and marketing students made a video last year celebrating the Woot Wagon, and it is really, really cool. The data. So again, this kind of ties into why I think it's so important for an admin to be leading it and to be communicating about it regularly. I run a quick little report every week. I recognize the top 5 star earners. So the people that are using the program the most. And then, I recognize those people that won the raffles. And I think it's just a good reminder, like, okay, we're paying attention. This is not just, something that we're going to say, hey, we have this resource and then ignore for the rest of the year. I'm going to cruise through this, but automate anything you can. An important part of PBIS is that reteaching. And I've got simple Google Calendar uploads that can make your life so much easier. They're just little simple YouTube videos that my lab teachers can pull up and show, this week we're talking about kindness. They show it on Monday. We're trying to reinforce it throughout the rest of the week. We also do a bracelet every week so we have like a theme of the week. Is it work hard, be kind, be responsible? And then the video highlights or reteaches one of those behaviors. And some of the students, those are welding students that we have there that are like really into it. You would be surprised. We have this idea that they're young adults, they're not going to be into that, but they are. And it just keeps things light. We do attendance acknowledgement every week. My DCM students make a video for me, highlighting the senior and the junior labs who have the best attendance, and then whoever had the best attendance can schedule the coffee cart, which is very, very popular. Because we can't have phones anymore, we've got games. And again, this is like that proactive thing, right? We know they're not going to be able to be on their phones, so let's give them something positive to do. Let's give them games. Uno is really all you need. Learn from me. Suite 360 is when you need more than tier 1. It's when, maybe you've got a situation that could even be suspendable, but you want to try to reduce their days of suspension, or eliminate it altogether. Usually I use it to reduce a day or so. I can assign them these activities. And I'm going to cruise because I know I'm taking too long. But Unity Day is something that we celebrate in October, and then throughout the year. All of our students get orange shirts at the beginning of the year. And I'm not going to show you this video for the sake of time, but please, please, please go back and watch it if you need any inspiration for why we should be doing this work at all. It was an activity that we did where we asked the students to put on a Post-it, if you knew me, you would know. And it was heartbreaking. You know, you think that you know the big situations or the students who've really been through it. Everybody's going through something. So that's my PBIS spiel. I know I went too long. I apologize. But I'm happy to answer any questions or, you know, talk to anybody at any time. I have Tusky Valley coming later today. I love to talk PBIS. So bring it on. I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you, Tina, for sharing all the good things about PBIS that PLCC is doing. If you have any questions for Tina, please feel free to reach out to her or put anything in the chat while we are still presenting right now. And I'm going to introduce Amanda and Andrea, and they will be sharing their early warning interventions and monitoring system.
Good morning, everybody. Amanda Wiseman from Tri-County Career Center. I'm one of the principals slash directors. Tina, beautiful presentation. I'm a big PBIS lover. I think that energy that you provided, I would love to look back at the videos, but hear me, I get you, and I love it. I love that the data provides some research behind it as well and making things easier. John, Molly, Brandy, the TTW stuff, this has been such an amazing, inspiring meeting. So I hope I can continue to hold that up. When I was asked by Melinda to do this, I did not know there was going to be 150 people in this presentation, but I'm honored to be here today, and I will also share my email when I get done. But great work so far to everybody. So I do have a presentation. I'm going to try to share that. Let's see. I did not know I would need to do this part. I'm so sorry. Oh, it's gonna make me lead a meeting.
I can share it for you if that's easier.
That would be great.
Okay, just give me 1 second and I'll pull it up.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was gonna make me leave the meeting.
No problem. Just I gotta move some stuff around here and then we should be good to go.
There we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. There are a little bit some things on here that kind of translated weird, but so the big goal for us as Tri-County is that we host 8 home districts, and our goal is to make sure that we do everything we can to retain those students that we recruit, but also make them very successful. And if you kind of go to the next slide. We had an early meeting with our home districts, and the goal was to identify every student that hit that 10% absenteeism within the 10 or 15 day mark. We wanted to communicate early and often with our home districts. We communicated that through email and also just through phone calls. We also looked at anybody who might have been failing classes within the first 9 weeks. And we do a better job of communicating with our home districts, any student that has been receiving an OSS. So ongoing communication, we discovered, was the most important piece to our homeschool principals. We did communicate with when homeschools where students were suspended, and that was basically for eligibility purposes, supporting events and after school events. We wanted to communicate ahead of time because what happened last year with one of our home districts was a student really wasn't going to meet the pathway for graduation. And, you know, our home district was frustrated because we couldn't keep them here. You know, there's always like these barriers to having a full day or, you know, half a day of lab. And getting that feedback, we've done such a better job this year of being early and often with our communication. We were in a part of a grant called Each Child on Track. It's ECOT, and it's through with Melinda Johnson. And that data has really been supportive of these initiatives as well. So one of the things we communicated was, you know, our home district, like this is our enrollment by home district. So having that up front with them, I think is very honest and open. And then one of the things we're looking at is to make sure that our juniors kind of match our seniors. What we're seeing is that some of the students that leave their junior year, we don't know why they're not coming back their senior year. So that's creating that ongoing, communication and conversation with their home districts. We also communicated that the students that we receive, most of the districts that we have are at 25% or less of students with IEPs. And it looks, Alexander, according to this data, this is this year, students that they sent us, 41% of them have an IEP. Athens, 31% of them had an IEP. Federal Hawking, 25%. Logan, and we like to look at like, why is this happening? What's the communication breakdown? Is there a communication breakdown? What's the message that we're sending? Also, just kind of like, how do we recruit? And I think having the data here has been really helpful with creating those conversations. So once we establish the three areas, the grades, the behaviors, and the attendance, we went through like tier one type of relationships. So we want to work on with our staff. Are we getting engagement in their labs? Are we getting engagement in the academic classrooms? Are we building relationships amongst our staff? Are the staff kind of establishing clear expectations and having the staff communicate with us early and often, those kids that are not coming to school? And that has been really helpful. And the tier two type check-ins is what you're going to see next in the next slide, is that the attendance check-ins with our staff. We've developed an attendance team. There's 5 of us that meet regularly on Mondays, and that has been really, really supportive of making sure that our students are getting the support and they have a person they check in with. We have our academic support. We've got 2 academic teachers. Our coaches, career coaches, and our IS staff has been contacting and providing the academic support necessary. And then we're also contacting families. One of the slides you're going to see here in a minute is that we want to actually retain the students too from the beginning to the semester. And so we're coordinating more conversations around success plans versus reasons why they stay. We want to look for every reason possible why we can keep a student versus why we want to return a student. And that's been something like when I hear John, Molly, and Brandy talk, we know that students are going to be uncomfortable or comfortable with being uncomfortable. We want to design things that are making students independent and successful. And having the ECOT data, Each Child on Track data, where we're looking at identified students and their success, has really been eye-opening for our district. And you're going to see some data here in a second. But it's also been eye-opening for not only our home schools, but also for our teaching staff as well. So we want to, like I said earlier, we're going to communicate early and often with our home schools. And that has been so we have 8 districts. Every district got an email of all the students that were 10% or higher of the absentee threshold. And that was at the quarter and also at the 20 to 30 day mark. And it created conversations around these students already. And that helped kind of track and monitor, but also helped create conversations at the semester that do these students are they going to be successful at Tri-County? And what other things can we do to provide support for them? So we developed an absent attendance intervention team. Like I said earlier, 2 instructional aides, our CBI instructor. And as a team, we have a tracking sheet, and it's through Excel. We are working with something called Panorama, which a lot of our home districts have, and it's going to provide real-time data. But right now, we just use a tracking sheet, and all of my 5 people have people that they track and they go and meet with once a week, or more often than that. They're also in charge of calling home, making sure that they come to school, establishing what the barriers were of why they're not coming to school, and then working with additional connections to kind of make the students want to come to school. So the meetings were on Monday. We had a regular working agenda. Having that regular meeting set up with those 5 people is probably the most crucial thing you can do to determine that you're going to follow through with the success of these kids. And additional check-ins, like they had probably 30 to 35 check-ins a week with different students, and it was 5 or 6 people. So that was really, really helpful. We did phone calls home to parents when we needed to, and we'd also use like mini goals. So we would we do something called Thunderbucks, sort of like what Tina was talking about with PBIS rewards. So if student would come, for 2 weeks straight, we would reward them in such a way, or if a month straight, we would set up mini rewards and hope that would help support better attendance overall. So we divided our groups. So these are my 6 people, and we divide into groups by lab. And so what we discovered is that some labs, their attendance was really good. And then some labs, they really struggled. So the ones that have the fewer labs probably have the higher amount of students in those labs. But just kind of creating this check-in has been really helpful. And these guys, and you have to pick the right people. Like you've got to pick people that really, really want to support the students and that have time in their schedule to do that and to kind of build that relationship, that capacity. But once you do that, it takes the onus off a lot of times this falls on the building principals, the assistant principals, your admin team, and you have people in real time being able to check in with these guys, and it's been really helpful. So this is some data we looked at from the first semester for the first 9 weeks. So by district, and this is all like once we've had 2 principal meetings with their homeschool principals so far. And we have established that, Alexander, we can see that 11 of the 88 kids were at 10% threshold. And you kind of read the chart from there, but sharing this data with them has been really helpful. And what they're also seeing, so we saw an increase in the percent absenteeism from the first 9 weeks of the semester, which is the opposite of what we wanted. But we actually saw all of our home districts all saw the same increase. And in December, like December to November, December. So it kind of fell in line with what our home districts were seeing as well. So that was kind of a little bit more settling, but there's just, having this attendance piece, having the moment of reflection has been really, really helpful. So also, like we're looking at behaviors, like one of the things that ECOT wants you to track is anytime out of school. So we had 7 students have an out of school suspension, and we started with 70 days, and that's with 10 days. These are going to be, our out of schools are for like fighting, drug use, things that you cannot serve like an in-school for. But I'm interested in the Sweet 360 that Tina was talking about, because I think that would help as well. And these are students that started with a 10-day out, and all of them have been reduced besides 2. And when you're going from 70 days of out of school suspension and taking it down to 40, that's a really good improvement. I would love to see less out of school suspensions, and we're going to work as an admin team to continue to work around that and to see other solutions for fighting or for drug use and things like that. So I would love to have any of your ideas as well with that. So then I also presented this by home district, just to kind of have, and this was a little bit uncomfortable because, you don't want to always say Athens kids, like they're bad. They're not bad, you got some, but it's good to kind of look at that and just be reflective of it. Of course, we are full inclusion. This is year 2 of full inclusion with students with disabilities. And just in the last 3 years, or I'm sorry, last 4 years, like 4 years ago, the incidences with students with disabilities was 67% of our events were students with disabilities. And this year we're on track to a reduction of 23%. So now that we're 2nd year of full inclusion, our data shows that 44% of the students that were having an event actually is way less. So we're really happy. We don't know if it's being around typical peers. We don't know. There's a lot of things that we're looking at why it's causing it, but to see that type of decrease, we're very, very excited about. Ann Hinkle she's our intervention coordinator. She's done a fantastic job of making full inclusion work and having heterogeneous groups. And it's something we're really proud of and seeing a difference in behavior. These are, again, just different behavior things that we communicated with our home districts. Again, this presentation was shared, so there's some vulnerability in that. So, but I like looking at that and just kind of creating the conversation around that. We also looked at course outcomes. If you go to the next slide, I think it's so we had 112 courses failed overall. 66% or 66 students that failed. So 66 students were affected, and they failed 112 courses. But of that, what I love to see, which I didn't see the first 9 weeks, was that 42 of the 66 were actually greater than 10% absenteeism. So that showed that the attendance does affect the overall course outcome, which in sometimes data doesn't show that. And I love sharing that with our building principals to know like, hey, they have to be here in order for them to be successful. But we're working on the engagement pieces, the support for our teachers as well. But communicating this out with our home districts has been really shown to be helpful. And this is the kids. So this is the slide I think is the most important. And it was with my math and my language arts teachers, is that we had 22 students that were failing. These kids actually come to school every day. They were under the 10% threshold. And 8 of them were identified. So I have to really look at my coursework and say, these students come to school every day, they're identified. Why are they failing? How are they failing? And those conversations, this type of data is where the work happens, right? So we want to see why, what have you done? Are you familiar with the IEP? Are you familiar with understanding the accommodations? Have you communicated with parents? Like all these things, because we're tracking with ECOT, has been such a valuable resource, and it drives all of our communication and our conversations with not only our staff but our homeschool. So we're really happy with that. We aren't always happy with the data that we get, but we're happy that we're tracking it to look and make sure that we get better from it. I mean, it creates great conversation. So yeah, and then so identified students that these are the greater than 10%. We had 42 kids that did not have a failing score this semester. 21 of them were identified, 21 of them were not identified. So again, the model that we're using with a full inclusion, it's really kind of showing that all students can be successful. And I can't wait to continue to develop the model. I would love to see every kid in a heterogeneous mix. And because our labs are doing it. When you see, and we were trying to do a lot more curriculum where academic classes, teachers are seeing the labs. Lab teachers are doing it all the time. They're constantly grouping students by, their success or by their skills. And we need more of that in our academic settings where the students that have, higher success, they're continuing to grow, but all of our students are growing. And that's something we're really trying to preach here at Tri-County. And it's been an honor. And honestly, there's been chills in my body many times because I've seen it happen. So these are the conversations I'm having actually with a group of our math teachers today. So if you look at the second 9 weeks, and this is vulnerable for me to share, but we had 13 students fail algebra. 12 of those students were identified. And I've got to figure that out. We have to know what's going on. We know that 8 of them were actually here every day. So they're here regularly. They may not be perfect attendance, but they were here regularly. But kind of creating what's going on, what's happening that the students with an IEP and they can still fail, but what I hope we understand, just all the support that is necessary for them to be successful. So this, course outcomes are such a big piece of a student success. So one of the things that I'm most proud of and that I'm able to share at the end when I talk to the building principals is that we do have 41 kids that don't come to school. And a lot of these kids do have an IEP and they're on internship every day. So I try to end it on a positive, right? To be, completely transparent, but several of these students, I don't have the exact number that are out with an internship do have an IEP and they're being very successful. So we're able to offer coursework online, but also coursework that is modified for students to be successful so they can be on an internship as well. And one of the biggest indicators of success within our district, and it's something I'm really proud of, and it's for the next slide, is our retention. So if you see, in 2018 and 2019, we retained about 90.5%. And then we had the COVID year, which a lot of our districts were offering, online instruction. We couldn't do that. So we went 78%. But the last 2 years, if you looked at 24, 25, we've retained 96.1% of our students. And then this year, 96.3% of our students. At semester, we returned only 8 students. And even though we had some success issues that we're working on with the courses, That comfortable feeling, the students not wanting to leave, is something that we're very, very, very proud of. So we retain 96.6% of our students at semester. And you talk about wanting to make your homeschool principals happy. This data right here is what it is. So we're coupling this with our course outcomes and making sure that students are getting these credentials, making sure that they're finding a post-program placement, they're finding a job in their field. But all of this has been such a great conversation around our home districts. And we are miles away from where we should be and where we're going. But like Amy said, or no, like Tina said, just start and start tracking it, start communicating that, because your home districts don't want to lose their kids, but some of the kids, they're not minding losing, right? So we know that, right? So, but take that as like something that we own and that we're excited for the challenge. And then track the data, track the information, and then be able to share that out, because honestly, this is where it's at. And then I was also able to show them by district how many kids we lost, how few kids we lost. And I'm just very proud of that overall. And that is all. I will also share my email in the chat if there's any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. You had some great comments in the chat too. So yeah, good stuff. And yeah, it's just been a joy to watch this team. So to kind of really see them dig into this. And if you could just hear Amanda talk about, she said a couple times how vulnerability was hard. And that was one of the big things that they really overcame, was that vulnerability. And they've worked really hard with their partner schools to do some connections with their students as well in other ways that she hasn't had time to talk about because we limited her. So thank you, Amanda and Tina, for giving those presentations. Those were great. And I think Emily's going to jump on and tie this into a bigger kind of picture for us.
Yes. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Tina. Yes, and thank you. I know you had a lot of content to cover in a short amount of time, and these are discussions we definitely want to keep having. But thank you for starting the conversations. And what Tina and Amanda shared is tiered systems of support that both fit wonderfully within Ohio's new integrated multi-tiered system of supports. I'm not going to get too into depth about this, but we just wanted to share information. So Ohio's integrated multi-tiered system of supports is all about just what Tina and Amanda shared, using data, working together to make sure that we're providing effective instruction for all students across academic and non-academic supports. So it's really about how do we tie all of this together. Next slide. Because historically, what has happened.
Hang on. My mouse is frozen. Keep talking. I'll get you there, I promise.
Historically, what has happened is we have, behavior and we're addressing that. We have academics and we're addressing that. We may have attendance, we're addressing that. We're addressing all of these things, and typically we have different teams looking at this data, coming up with interventions, progress monitoring. So the concept with integrated multi-tiered systems of supports is saying, how do we bring all of this together and combine it just so that we can be the most effective? Because what we all know is these don't really function in silos. If you have a kid, I think Amanda did a great job of demonstrating this. If you have a kid who's struggling with attendance, that's going to impact their academics. And so rather than looking at these things separately, how are we looking at them all together? And then the last one is just like Tina and Amanda pointed out, the key concepts of IMTSS are the integrated multi-tiered systems of supports, universal screening, data-based decision making, with which both of them really clearly demonstrated, continuum of supports, which they both clearly demonstrated, progress monitoring, and team-based problem solving. So that's really what it's all about. And they are two examples of what fits within IMTSS. I'm going to put the link to IMTSS in the chat box so you can get more information if you want it. So the reflection question for this discussion, something to think about as we end, is how do we ensure that all students, including students with disabilities, are fully included in all components of IMTSS? So when we are talking about data, screening, interventions, how do we make sure we're including our students with disabilities in all of those discussions?
You are welcome to unmute and comment back or put anything in the chat or maybe just quietly reflect. We'll give you a few moments before we move on. Thank you, Emily, for helping facilitate that. And thank you to our presenters. Great information. And again, please I love to look up and I see 30 new chats. So keep it going. These are great conversations and great places to start, right? Just start somewhere. I'm going to turn it over to Kenny. He's going to help us make some connections about today.
Yeah, it's been great to hear all of the different presenters today and their passion and what they're doing, the great things they're doing for their schools and their CTE, and CTPD districts, but how we can help the state support team. One of the biggest things is the facilitated self-review process. And when you're seeing that, that's that first slide over on the corner there of how is it that we're able to reflect on areas of strengths and opportunities of growth and serving students with disabilities. And some of those areas that would be recruitment and application, the selection and placement of students, provision of special education services, and just that continuous improvement model. And some of the ways that connects in that may be more relevant to the work that everybody's doing, it could be your one plan and your one needs assessment. That's a piece of evidence that could be used that a CTPD consultant can help with. We heard Amanda talk about her work with Each Child on Track and the work with Melinda. So if you're a school or you have a district that's participating in Each Child on Track, great opportunity for participation in this facilitated self-review. And then also the comprehensive local needs assessment with the Perkins grant. Just to sum everything up, our job is to be a collaborative support, to your district to help improve outcomes for students with disabilities in a CTE setting. So feel free to reach out to any of us to set up a meeting, and we'll be happy to help and be a part of the journey in supporting you and the students.
Thank you, Kenny. We also have a really exciting opportunity that our friend Melissa is going to share out.
Hi, everybody. This has been a great meeting, so kudos to my colleagues and the speakers for sharing all this great information with us. I can't wait to go back and look at some of the presentations. So one thing I wanted to share is through the SST and some secondary transition funds, we are hosting Dr. Sandra Adams. She's the author of a book called But I'm Not a Reading Teacher. And she has expertise in helping career technical teachers utilize literacy strategies in their classrooms so that their students can better access that technical content, improve their WebXam scores, and then, of course, improve overall literacy skills. So we are having a virtual professional learning session next Tuesday. It is free, and the only thing we ask is if you sign up that you agree to participate and engage, because she's going to model things with a group that is live. So she'll be sharing things with us, and then we'll go like via camera to a location, and that team is going to be modeling what she is asking us to do. But we really want the participation in there. So it's 8 to 2:30. We'll have a 30 to 45-minute lunch break. And then she will ask at the end of that for teachers to send some lesson plans to her, and she will help guide us through follow-up sessions about how to incorporate some of these literacy strategies. because she's very well aware that we all go to PD, we learn all this great stuff, but then that implementation back in our own classrooms can be a little bit of a hump we have to get over. So she is going to walk us through some of that with some brave teachers who are going to share some lessons. So there's some registration information there. We do have an interpreter also. So if you have someone who is hearing impaired, we can make accommodations with a live interpreter that day as well. So I hope to see some more registrations pop up, and we'll share that Zoom link with you if you register.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, Stacia has some additional information to share with you for your calendars.
All right. Just a reminder that these are some of the events that are coming up with Ohio ACTE. And I'm not going to necessarily read them all, but they will be part or posted on the Padlet along with both or all of the presentations.
Thank you.
Hope we see you soon. Yep.
All right, so we are kind of getting to the end of our time together, and we are going to go to our regional breakout rooms next, but I know that some of you will need to leave from there. So we would like for you to go ahead and give us a little bit of feedback. We've also put the link to the Padlet, and if one of my colleagues can make sure that gets dropped one more time in the chat, make sure that you bookmark it, save it. When we're finished today, all of the presenters' slide decks and our information will be added to the Padlet so that you can go back and access those. And earlier we told you this was being recorded. So when the recording is converted, give us a couple weeks. But when that's done, that'll also be put up there. So if there's something that you really want to go back and listen, or you want to make sure you heard that assessment right, that will be available to you. So again, let us know how we did. Let us know, not really how we did, let us know about the content, what you would like to see in the future as we plan for these statewide meetings. And then I believe at this time, after you